When I had the really bad episode of constipation, my heart rate was over 200 just because of the amount of stress that I was. And then I knew something had to change at that point in time. And that's when I started to actually went off the pain meds and actually start to actually try to drastically cut back my weight so I could get up and move at more at that point in time. I got off this morning. Our shifts are 24 hours on, 48 hours off. So basically it's not like normal jobs where you have designated break times. Like, yes, when you're at the station, other than trainings and stuff like that, as long as you're not on a detail, or a lot of it, the time is yours, which is a big advantage for my training. But when it comes to diet, and then like it could be a disadvantage sometimes too. Whereas like in the tying in this carnivore diet, I found it has been a huge advantage. Because every time we transport somebody to the hospital, we go into the squad room, they got all kinds of junk food, all kinds of goodies that are constantly in your face. And if you go there 10 times a day, you got that temptation 10 times. But if you're actually more satisfied, it's a lot easier to say no. And then if you're not hungry, then you're not going to grab a snack here, a snack there. Before I got hurt, every single time that I would make a transport to the hospital, even if I wasn't hungry, I was just eating out of straight boredom, which I don't do that anymore whatsoever. So I'm able to go a pretty decent amount of time without eating. It's not because I'm actively trying to do intermittent fasting. It's just how it works out, just due to my satiating and how I feel comfortable. My eating routine right now, a lot of times I'll have a big meal like around 6 o'clock at night. Then I'll wake up about 4:30 in the morning, have some coffee and some water and some salt. Then I'll do my morning training. And then usually around 9:30, 10 o'clock is when a lot of times I'll have my first meal. And then I pretty much won't have a lunch, and then I'll eat again at dinner. The way that ties in, it pretty much ties in very similarly at work too with that eating schedule. And then if I got meat that's already prepared, I'm able to take it with me and then do what I need to do. Before I got hired at the fire department, I ran some with my dog when he was young. Before I got my surgery, I think I was actually planning ahead to be more active than I realized, because before my surgery, I actually got myself a Rottweiler puppy that I knew was going to need a lot of work. So I think at that point in time, I created that need, being able to, hey, you got to get up and walk because you got something that's depending on this exercise. It's not just you got to get outside. You can't just be up and around the house. You have to get out. Otherwise, this dog's going to destroy everything. And then so when I was returning to work, I was getting up early. I was walking him several miles, sometimes 5-6 miles before work. And then he would still have a decent amount of energy because his fitness improved as well. That's hard to say because he was still a pretty young dog, but he wasn't really getting fatigued. And we have a small yard at the house, so that he would be more tolerable. That's when I actually started running. It wasn't really for me. It was really more so just to tire out the dog before I went into work for a 24-hour shift. And then surprisingly on the diet, I was like, hey, I'm actually halfway decent at this. And then I feel pretty good. I'm recovering very quickly. I'm able to stack on a lot of mileage. So just because of having a man's best friend to do it with me and becoming better than I thought I was going to be ever, it got me to be a lot more confident and sign up for these races and push myself to things which I didn't think I would be able to complete when I first signed up for them.
Yeah, you mentioned a little bit about occasionally you have some fruit from time to time. How does your training, you're eating mostly meat or all meat at times, how does that impact your ability to run these ultramarathons? Has it been negative? You don't have, I guess you haven't run them before, but you're still putting up decent times, it sounds like.
A lot of the fruits, because I tried to lift some within this running training so that so I could preserve what strength that I would have. So that's where a lot of the fruit would actually come in. A lot of times the space in between water, fruit, and salt, probably about 30 minutes before I would actually start working out with a resistance training of some sort. As far as I wouldn't really eat dates or anything like that before like any training runs. My first ultramarathon, the way I prepare for that is calorie wise is I had probably about a 2 3/4 pound ribeye the night before, and then a decent amount of whole milk, and then I had some butter. So I was, all right, just on that day, I was at a 2,000 calorie surplus of what I actually needed, and I had a decent amount of calorie surplus for the previous 2 days. I don't recall exactly what they were beforehand, but I knew roughly I was going to be burning through 7,000 calories just because of my size. I didn't calculate it. That's just what I'm able to guesstimate. And for the most part, I've been pretty close. During the race, I had a total of, I didn't really feel like I needed it. I knew I wasn't drinking all that much water. It was February. It wasn't like it was burning hot. So I didn't really have all that much of a thirst drive. I had a couple of dates. I had a couple of those, which, if anything, the thing that I noticed right away is that just the fructose in the dates, it was more of like an emotional boost than anything. Like, I didn't feel like that was like dry, but it's just like having that sensation of sugar. It was like, yeah, this is good. It was, when I retrospect looked at it, it was a similar sensation to having fast food. That's that kind of feeling. Oh, this is nice. But it obviously not quite to the same detrimental effect, which I don't think the dates had a detrimental effect. After the first ultra, to get myself to try to drink more water, I had a fairly decent amount of freeze-dried fruit, freeze-dried strawberries in particular, just so I would have more of a thirst appetite, because I only had about 70 ounces of water during that first race because I wasn't very thirsty. And then when I got back home from the race, I was weighing about 205 at that point in time. And then the next morning, I was at 217 pounds. And then I was very swollen. My knees were all swollen. My calves were swollen. So at that point in time, I wasn't really eating. I was just like, all right, I'm not eating more fruit because I was pretty inflamed, but I was able to walk. And then because of the fitness I acquired at that point in time, that I was able to run 2 days later and get back on the train plan. So I was able to walk 2 days after the ultramarathon, then was back running two days. There's not much I could find about people my size running an ultramarathon. So I think I'm starting to find like a little bit of a niche. I know that you got your world records with the rower. And I tried a rower when I was doing this ultramarathon training, and I suck at it. But I found something that I'm fairly decent at with my size. And I'll be honest, I don't want to lose my strength or muscle mass because being strong is more fun than running. But having the ability to be able to do these endurance runs is a pretty great thing that I don't want to lose. So I don't want to get weak. And then I want to carry this muscle with me as long as I can. And then potentially after this 100-mile race, I want to try to put on some more strength again to mix it back up instead of just constantly running down, because as relatively pretty lean right now. I'm actually the leanest I've ever been in my life, but I miss being able to lift more time out of the day. And then this running training just takes a fairly decent amount. Like when I did a 100-mile week, that was about 17, 18 hours out of just 1 week of just solely running, not talking about the recovery of walking or anything like that. Then that's hard to tie in weightlifting to especially when you got 2 kids. So it's really time management is what that boils down to, is why I don't want to solely just run all the time and abandon lifting.
Yeah, fair.